Have you ever felt that as you awaken spiritually, your relationships begin to crumble, as if everything that once seemed solid simply stops making sense? Carl Jung said, "What we deny in ourselves, we find in others as fate." Perhaps that's why, when you start to see more clearly, what was once harmony turns into conflict, the masks fall, and what's left, often, is emptiness. But is this in fact a loss? Or is it a liberation? In this video, we will dive deep into an uncomfortable yet necessary topic. Why do so many relationships fall apart during a spiritual awakening? And why might this actually be a hidden gift? A spiritual awakening redefines not just your worldview, it transforms how you see yourself, and consequently, how you relate to others. Maybe you're feeling lonelier, stranger, even guilty for pulling away from people who once seemed essential. Maybe you've tried to maintain old bonds, but you felt that something just doesn't fit anymore. And what if I told you this isn't the end? It's just the beginning. Today, you will understand why what seems like destruction is in fact reconstruction. We'll talk about mirrors, masks, archetypes, and old wounds, and how all of this deeply influences the way you love, give, and connect. You are not breaking your relationships. You are breaking patterns. Shall we begin? Have you ever noticed how some relationships simply change when you start to transform on the inside? In a spiritual awakening, we begin to see others with more attentive eyes, but we also start to see ourselves with an honesty that wasn't possible before. And in this mirror, we often find discomfort. Relationships have always been mirrors, but now the reflection is clearer and more challenging. When your frequency changes, when your choices become more conscious, certain bonds start to feel forced. What was once tolerable now becomes heavy, and you ask yourself, why is this happening right now? The answer lies in the fact that not all connections can withstand the truth. Some only exist as long as you play a specific role, wear a specific mask. When that mask falls, the relationship also loses its structure, and everything that isn't real begins to dissolve. In the process of awakening, something very profound begins to happen. You stop acting. The persona, that social mask built over the years to please, belong, and be accepted, starts to crack, and when it breaks, who you truly are begins to emerge. Jung said, "The persona is what someone is not, but what he and others think he is." And when this illusion shatters, the bonds that depended on it also begin to crumble. Perhaps you were the family peacemaker, the friend who always listens but never speaks, the partner who gives in, swallows their pride, adapts. When you stop fulfilling that role, the illusory balance is broken. What was harmony becomes tension. What was acceptance becomes discomfort, because your authenticity confronts the other's expectation, and this clash is inevitable, but necessary. Imagine a musical instrument. When one string is out of tune, the whole ensemble sounds strange. And if you tune that string, perhaps it no longer matches the rest of the music. The same happens with our bonds during an awakening. Your frequency changes, silently but irreversibly, and suddenly, what once flowed begins to sound like noise. Conversations lose their meaning, gatherings feel forced, and something inside you simply can't connect like it used to. It's as if there's a bridge of light between your inner world and the outer world. This bridge changes shape as you transform. Some people can cross it with you, others stay on the other side. It's not personal, it's energetic. And this change, though painful, is profoundly true. The more you align with your essence, the more selective your energy becomes. It's as if your vibrational field starts to attract only what resonates with it. Old relationships may start to feel artificial, heavy, even empty, but this doesn't mean you are ungrateful or arrogant. It just means there is now a mismatch. Often you try to insist. You force meetings, make conversation out of obligation, laugh without enthusiasm. But deep down, you know, the harmony is lost. This is one of the hardest aspects of awakening. The heart still feels affection, but the soul asks for truth. And the truth at this stage demands resonance. You don't reject the other person. You simply acknowledge that there is a difference in frequency, and you decide not to abandon yourself to maintain a connection that no longer exists. During an awakening, pretending becomes unbearable. You realize that to maintain certain bonds, you would have to go back to being a version of yourself that no longer exists. But how can you stay small after having experienced expansion? Authenticity comes at a price. Not everyone around you is ready to live with who you truly are, because your truth, even when spoken with love, can confront another's comfort zone. You start to speak less, but with more depth. You start to say no even when the other expects a yes. You start to show up fully without filters, and this causes discomfort. But it's not about deliberately causing ruptures. It's about stopping the creation of connections based on distorted versions of yourself. And this choice, as lonely as it may seem, is profoundly liberating. There comes a time when silence becomes more truthful than company. During an awakening, solitude ceases to be a punishment. It transforms into a fertile ground, a sacred space where you can finally listen to your own soul without interference. It's like soil resting before the next harvest. Nothing seems to bloom for a while, but underground the roots are deepening, and it is there in that apparent emptiness that the reconnection with your essence happens. You begin to realize that you are not alone, you are with yourself, and this presence, once avoided, now reveals itself as your greatest refuge. It is in this phase that you stop seeking external distractions, and you finally begin to cultivate the peace that can only sprout from within. Letting go is not giving up. It is recognizing that each person has their own rhythm, their own journey, their own time to awaken. During this process, you realize that you cannot force anyone into your new reality. As much as you may wish for certain people to understand your transformation, not everyone is ready or willing to follow. You must accept that some will drift away, others will resist, and many will not comprehend what is happening to you. But awakening demands respect, respect for yourself and for the other's path. To let go is to allow each person to follow their own flow. It is to not try to convince, change, or adjust. It is to release control and trust that what is true will remain, and what leaves will make space for something more aligned to emerge. The spiritual awakening also reveals what was hidden beneath the surface of relationships, power games, subtle manipulations, emotional dependencies. You start to see where you gave in too much, where you diminished yourself, where you sustained imbalances in the name of harmony. And that changes everything. The new consciousness no longer tolerates relationships based on the fear of loss, guilt, or the need for control. What once went unnoticed now jumps out and is deeply unsettling. This clarity brings unprecedented courage, the courage to say no, to walk away, to demand reciprocity, not out of pride, but out of dignity. Little by little, you stop accepting the minimum, and you start choosing bonds where there is truth, presence, and balance. When you change, not everyone celebrates. Some feel threatened, others react with judgment, silence, or irony. This resistance, most of the time, has nothing to do with you, but with what your transformation awakens in the other: fear, insecurity, loss of control, unconscious envy. You become a mirror that reflects what the other is not yet ready to see in themselves, and this naturally provokes reactions. Therefore, it is essential to learn to set boundaries, to say how far you allow yourself to be accessed, and to protect your energy without losing compassion. You don't need to prove anything, nor justify yourself. Just stay firm in your process, even if it causes discomfort around you. Some relationships will withstand it, others will not, but your integrity must remain. In awakening, you begin to distance yourself from the expectations that society, culture, and even your family have placed on you. Roles that seemed indisputable, the obedient child, the successful professional, the ideal partner, begin to lose their meaning. You realize you were not made to fit into molds, but to express your essence, and this change can be mistaken for selfishness. It can lead to accusations, demands, and even guilt. But following your truth is not betraying others. It is ceasing to betray yourself. You stop living to please, and you start living to align with what is real in you. It is an act of courage, but also of love, because only when you free yourself from external expectations can you truly find yourself. True validation no longer comes from the outside. It is born from inner silence, from the encounter with what is non-negotiable in you. During the awakening, you begin to realize that you no longer need approval to exist fully. Intuition starts to guide your choices, your words, your bonds. You begin to nurture the ties that vibrate with your truth, and with serenity, you let go of those that were just taking up space. It is no longer about quantity but quality, about presence, about depth. To accept yourself completely is to stop seeking in others what can only be found within. It is to stop fighting against who you are. And finally, to rest in yourself. Over time, you realize that you don't need to be surrounded by many people to feel complete. What you seek now is depth, not a crowd. You become like a tree in autumn. You lose leaves, but you deepen your roots. And even with fewer branches around, your presence becomes more stable, more dense, more true. Shallow conversations lose their meaning. The exchange of appearances ceases to matter. What matters now is being with those who are also willing to dive deep, to shed their masks, to share vulnerabilities. These few bonds become temples, spaces where love does not depend on masks, where silence is also a connection, where time does not erase but only strengthens. And it is there that you begin to understand the value of the essential. Spiritual awakening not only reveals new truths, it activates old wounds. Relationships become a stage for reuniting with parts of ourselves that were left behind. It is in this field that we project our greatest voids, hopes, and fears. Often we demand that the other person fulfill an archetypal role, the savior father, the all-embracing mother, the partner who completes us. And when the other fails, we feel pain, not because of the failure itself, but because it touches the original wound. The inner child, still needy for love and validation, cries out through relational dynamics. But by recognizing these projections, something changes. You begin to see the other as they are, not as you wish they were. And in this lucidity, idealized bonds may break, but the healing at last can begin. Because it is only possible when you stop demanding that the other fill what only you can integrate. The individual awakening is never just individual. It reverberates in the collective field. Every internal transformation has the power to alter the invisible network that connects us all. When you change, you inspire, you provoke, you activate. Even in silence, your new vibration reaches anyone who is receptive. True bonds begin to have a spiritual value. They are no longer just emotional or social. They become instruments of expansion, spaces where souls meet to evolve together. Relationships like these do not demand, do not imprison, do not limit. They liberate. And in doing so, they touch something greater. The presence of an awakened person can illuminate an entire room, and their energy, however subtle, has the power to remind others of what they also are. Spirituality is not only in the temple or in meditation. It is in the way you relate. It is in the love you offer without possessing. It is in the peace you bring without speaking. After so much diving deep, something quietly changes within you. The way you see life is no longer the same. It's like climbing to the top of a mountain. From up there, the dramas that once seemed gigantic are now just part of the landscape. You begin to see relationships not as ends in themselves, but as paths, portals to self-knowledge. What once hurt you now teaches you. What seemed like betrayal now reveals itself as liberation, and what was absence shows you how to fill yourself from within. Pain gives way to understanding, and understanding brings a peace that no longer depends on the other. This new perception does not eliminate challenges, but it changes how you walk with them, with more lightness, with more presence, with more consciousness. This is where the transformation solidifies, not in what you lost, but in what you learned to see. After so much deconstruction, loneliness ceases to be absence. It becomes presence, yours. It is no longer the silence of abandonment. It is the silence of return, a sacred space where the soul can, finally, breathe. Here you stop seeking comfort in others and start finding strength in yourself. You learn to listen to what was once muffled by external voices. You discover that there is a wisdom within you that has always been there, waiting for space. Loneliness becomes a place of healing, of retreat, of renewal, a temple where the most important bond is strengthened, the one between you and your own essence. It is in this inner sanctuary that clarity is born, and with it, the freedom to love without losing yourself, to give without fragmenting, to be with another without ceasing to be with yourself. When external ties dissolve, something greater begins to reveal itself, a silent, loving presence that fills the space previously occupied by neediness, dependence, or fear. This is the connection with the divine, not as a distant belief, but as a living experience within you. In the void left by old relationships, a new fullness emerges, a feeling of being accompanied even in silence, of being guided even without knowing the way, of being whole even with no one by your side. And in this encounter with the sacred, the deep self manifests, not the self of masks, but the one that is eternal, essential, indestructible. From this connection, human bonds also transform. You no longer love to fill voids, but to share abundance. You do not demand, do not expect, do not imprison. You just love. and you allow the other to be who they are. The final stage of awakening invites us to the most difficult surrender, accepting that everything passes. Relationships are not eternal contracts. They are soul encounters with an indefinite term. Some last a lifetime, others just a moment, but all serve a purpose. Like a flower that blooms for only one season, each relationship has its cycle. To resist its departure is to deny the beauty of what has already been lived. Learning to say goodbye with love is an act of wisdom. It is to recognize that even in loss there is growth, even in separation there is meaning, and even in pain there is life reorganizing itself. You don't need to cling to love. You can be grateful and let go. You can cry and move on. You can honor what was without being imprisoned by what is no more. Impermanence does not steal, it teaches. No relationship is lost for nothing. What seemed like an end was, in fact, a new beginning. What fell apart made space. What hurt revealed. Spiritual awakening does not destroy your relationships. It destroys the illusions about them, and that is freedom. You have learned that bonds do not need to be eternal to be true, that solitude can be fertile, that silence can be a shelter, that your presence with yourself is the most sacred relationship there is. From here on, the ties that remain will be more conscious, freer, more authentic. They will not come from neediness but from wholeness, not from the fear of loss but from the joy of connection. Love now becomes a choice, not a dependency. Companionship, a mirror of your fullness, not an attempt at completeness. Carl Jung wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. And perhaps, only after walking through your own inner night, are you ready to love with clarity and not with projection." May you honor every bond that brought you here, and may you have the courage to make space for those to come, because spiritual awakening doesn't destroy your relationships, it transforms them. And if you allow it, it transforms you too, forever.